Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/ProRevenge. Today, we have another set of brand new crazy revenge stories for you. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, leave comments so we know what kind of stories you love the most. Please close my account. So I work for a big car parts company in the UK. My job before I was moved to the legal department was a credit controller. I would call people up who had work done to their car, and I would chase them for payments. Now, some customers are rude. More play the game of letting you run through the chasing policy and paying up just before they go on hold, or when you're sending them to legal department. Many customers are lovely, and those you would go out of your way to help. Then there are some customers who completely blank you. They never answer the phone, they never answer an email, and they never reply to a letter. Nothing. And they certainly don't pay. These jerks are the first to go. So this one company had just set up with us, and their first month was due. I called, straight to voicemail. I emailed, no reply. I went through the policy we had in place, and it was only when I sent them a letter advising that they had 1 week to pay or they were going to court that they finally coughed up. However, I kept their account on hold until they had paid for the next month, as it had been that long, which I am perfectly in my rights to do. So they called my manager's manager and complained about me. Fortunately, he's epic and told them that he would look into it. He checked out everything I did, brought me in for a chat about it. He and I agreed that just this once I would take them off hold, provided they supply me with a payment date for their account, and they stuck to it. If they didn't, they would go straight back on hold. He then told me that he would call them back and let them know. I requested to be there when he did. He thought it was weird, but was fine with that, until he realized I only did it so when he got the voicemail, I could point out what I was dealing with. So the deal was off, and I was advised to get them. So I did. I dragged out the legal documents we had, checked the law pertaining to credit control and what I could do. I stuck rigidly to our policy. I called the customer and left a message advising exactly what time and date it was, down to the second, how much they owed, and when they should have been paid for. If they needed any extra documents, if they needed anything at all. I would then send an email containing their monthly statement, all the outstanding invoices, and the body of the email would start, in addition to the phone call I made at blank AM, I'm sending you a reminder email regarding, and repeat what I would say on my voicemail message. This would be repeated week after week, but each email would also have an attachment of the previous email going up in attachments as the weeks went on. I sent letters, and when one of the many I sent returned to me with incorrect address written on it, not stamped, but in pen, I decided I knew how to spend that day's lunch hour. I deal with companies all over the country. Unfortunately for them, I worked a half an hour away from them. So I called in. I asked for the accounts payables team leader by name and advised I was here for a job interview. When she arrived in the reception area, I introduced myself and handed her the letter, and an additional letter advising that we would be sending them to court in 7 days. I told her it was nice to finally put a face to the voicemail message, and I left. Over the next few working days, I called them each day and advised the voicemail how many days left they had before they were liable for legal action. I also sent the follow-up email attaching the bank details they needed every day. Finally, the day of truth came. The girl in charge of the legal team came over to my desk with a packed communication folder and asked, what the hell? Apparently, even when going after complicated bigwig non-payers, they didn't have this level of paperwork to fall back on. The deadline came and went, no payment, off to court. Apparently, it was open and shut. The judge asked for the chasing correspondence, the folder was produced, the judge laughed and ruled in our favor. A week later, the payment was in. The best part, and what I feel makes this story, is that a week after the payment was made, I received an email, my first and last from that company, requesting that we close their account, as they had no wish to do business with us anymore. I fired back a very polite email advising that their account had already been permanently closed as per policy and the contract they had signed to when they opened the account when the deadline passed, and pity about the black mark they had against their already not too great credit score. Also, the court fee was outstanding, and if they didn't pay for that as well, then we would retake them to court for that too. Received that payment the next day. Good on you for working really, really hard and diligently to make crooks work really, really hard to dig themselves into a hole and then pay to get out. And our second story. Neighbors sued me after harassing my dog for months, lost horribly. About 6 or 7 months ago, my neighbor got a drone. I don't mind people having hobbies, but for some reason he insisted on flying like the biggest jerk possible. He would hover in front of other houses and windows, try to race cars going down the road, and worst of all, he had a habit of flying his drone in my fenced backyard, buzzing over my dog, diving low just over my dog's head before circling around to do it again. My dog isn't small, he's about 70 pounds, a Malamute, but the drone terrified him, and I was worried what would happen if it hit him. I'd asked my neighbor several times to please not fly in my yard and explained that it was scaring my dog. He basically told me to get lost and laughed in my face. When it still continued, I called the police. Unfortunately, there wasn't much they could do other than ask him to please not fly over my house property. Finally, in late December, it happened. My dog got tired of his crap and managed to catch the drone right as it was diving towards him. He shredded the drone. The thing was just a jumbled mess of wires and plastic. Neighbor was PO'd. He stormed over to my house, swearing and threatening me, which I ignored. A week later, I got a summons to small claims court. He wanted $900 for the cost of his drone and an additional $300 for supposedly denying him access to his property. The drone sat in my yard for a couple hours before it was retrieved. F that. He could have killed my dog. I don't have kids or a girlfriend. I just have my dog, who's been my best friend for the past 7 years. That dog's moved with me 3 times. He was there when I graduated college, saw me buy my first house and my first new car. I love my dog. I went to legal advice and got some great help from them. Turns out him suing me was the best thing to ever happen. When we got to small claims court, the judge basically laughed away his claims that I had intentionally trained my dog to attack his drone, but little did he know, I was prepared. I had dozens of photos of my yard showing that it was impossible for him to accidentally fly that low to my dog, videos of him harassing my dog in the past, and I'd saved all my medical bills from taking my dog to the vet. $700 for an x-ray? Check. Another $250 to sedate him during? Why not? Don't want him being uncomfortable. Full dental exam with tooth cleaning and repair, $400. There was also the cost of anti-anxiety meds and a secondary checkup, wet food for a week in case his teeth were hurt, and extra just for good measure. In the end, the a-hole ended up owing me almost $2,000 and now is being investigated by the FAA for not having a registered drone and violating several FAA regulations concerning drone flight, too near an airport, too close to other people, out of sight of operator, and way above the maximum altitude. Enjoy never being allowed to fly drones again, jerk. And our next story. My contractor was cheap, so I made sure to get my money's worth. So this is actually what happened between my father and the contractor who built his house, my childhood home. In 2000, my parents and their 2 young children, aged 7 and 5, that's me, were looking to move into a house big enough for a family of 4 that they could stay in for a very long time. They found a newly constructed street in a quiet neighborhood in a town known for being family-friendly. It was perfect. There were only 4 available lots, so my mother chose the one she liked best. Now, the houses on these lots were still under construction, so they were mostly just framing at this point, so my parents decided to contact the contractor, let's call him Alfred, to see if they could have any input into the design, as they'd already set up a mortgage agreement on the property. Alfred agreed, but didn't let them do too much, which wasn't all that bad. My parents were pretty busy trying to sell their old house anyway. A few months go by, and the house is finally ready to be moved into. My parents are thrilled. They finally have their family home. We move in, and everything's great. For about 36 hours. On literal day 2, the furnace in the basement breaks and spews smoke through the whole house, setting off the smoke detectors. The police and fire department show up, investigate, and tell us we can return in 72 hours. So we stay in a nearby hotel for 3 days. Everything's great again, until we start noticing a bunch of small details that Alfred seems to have overlooked. My dad hires a home inspector to look at the house. The inspector finds numerous faults that could cost thousands to fix. My dad is PO'd. So my dad, being the calm a-hole that he is, and I love him for it, decides to get some help in paying for these repairs to his 7-month-old house. You see, Alfred had been the contractor for 4 houses on the street, of which only one, ours, had been bought. So my dad went to the bank and expressed interest in the other lots. He asked that a $1,000 lien be placed on each one. This was all legal. Alfred found out and was rightfully angry. He couldn't sell these lots because of the liens. He asked my dad to remove them. My dad agreed and said he would if Alfred paid for the repairs. Alfred refused to pay, so my dad refused to lift the liens. Alfred then sues my parents. My parents countersue. The court rules in favor of my parents. My dad had to lift his liens, but Alfred had to pay my parents $50,000 instead of paying $2,000 to $3,000 for repairs, and a home inspector looked at the other 3 lots and made him pay for any repairs on them. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video to the end, and I'll see you in the next one.